This video focuses on the introduction to scatter plots and what is correlation. This first slide is the definition of a scatter plot. I'll let you know what I do want you to write down in your notes. First thing is, what is a scatter plot? It shows the relationship between two variables. So go ahead and write relationship between two variables. Then, one variable will be on your horizontal axis, so think of that as like your x-axis. Go ahead and write that down. And the other variable will be on your vertical axis or your y-axis. And you'll have a set of points on your graph. You may hear this word explanatory variable. That's on your x-axis. And you'll have the response variable, which will be on your y-axis. Another way you may hear this is you have an independent variable and a dependent variable. So I just drew a little picture here of an example. Here is your independent variable. This is your x values. And then you have your dependent axis, which is your y-axis. It depends. So when you think about like a graph and you say you want to find out the height and the weight of someone, this would be your height, that would be your weight, your dependent. So just a couple example set there. All right, so there's a scatter plot. Describing the scatter plot, I'll just kind of walk through this with you. You don't need to write any of it down. What scatter plots do is see if maybe there is a relationship going on. Sometimes it might be linear, and that's what we're hoping for in our information later. You know, does it look like it's making a straight line, a line of best fit? Or is it curved? Does it have clusters? Are they all grouped together? Are there any outliers? And we'll get to what an outlier is in a little bit. Is there a trend? Is there a positive trend? Think about positive slope. Or is there a negative trend, a negative slope? What is the strength of the correlation? Is it really strong, means all the data points are really close together? Is it moderate, or is it weak, where the points are all over the place? All right, next thing I'm going to talk about is correlation. Go ahead and write that down, the correlation. It is the relationship between the two variables, the x and the y variables. It measures the direction and the strength of a linear relationship. So we use this letter R as the correlation. So go ahead and write down R. All right, now let's talk about if there's a positive correlation or a negative correlation. Go ahead and write down positive correlation has that upward trend. Think about it as a positive slope. What that looks like as your x-axis increases, so does your y value increase. If you have a negative correlation, go ahead and write that down. You have a downward trend. So you have what we think of as a negative slope. As your independent variable, your x variable increases, your y variable decreases. And the last is no correlation. The data doesn't have a trend. There isn't a relationship between the two. All right, so we kind of talked about the correlation, positive and negative. Here are some examples of some correlations of the positive. All right, so here is the rule. You'll have a correlation, and it's going to fall between -1 and 1, the value. So if we think about this first one, R being a positive 1, that means all of the points make this nice, pretty straight line. And then as you move through these picture graphs, now you have +8. They're a little bit more spread out. And then as you get a little bit smaller of a decimal, they're going a little bit farther out. So the closer you get to 1 in the positive, the stronger the correlation, the stronger the data points are. And that'll be the same as true for the negative. So now let's talk about the negative correlation. So you're going to have a -1 or a negative decimal value. So here are some pictures of negative correlation. So this is -1. All the points make that pretty straight line. And then as you move through the example, decimal value of -0.8, a little bit more spread out, -0.05, even more spread out, -0.02. Again, there's your R value. +1 would be the positive slope to -1. So you're thinking decimal values. The closer you get to that -1, the stronger the correlation. The farther away you get from -1, the not as strong of a correlation.